Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to take you through the 10 components that are required to do project baselining. So let's get into the details. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Oscar Mbira. I'm a certified program and project manager. If you're a project manager or just an appointed project manager and you're wondering how are you going to baseline the project, don't worry, you're in the right place. I'm going to take you through the 10 components that you need to baseline in your project. New to the channel, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. Project manager, there are certain components of project baselining that you should understand. So in this section, we are going to cover the 10 components for a project manager to understand in terms of project baselining. So 10 components. 10 components of project baselining. Project baselining. So we're going to look at these 10 components. So the first one we're going to look at is called scope. So we're going to put number 1. We're going to put scope. Okay. So what do we mean by scope? So I'm just going to put a line here. What do we mean by scope? When you talk of scope in baselining a project, we are looking at project deliverables, okay? So we are looking at project deliverables, okay? Okay. So in scope, when you're baselining a project, I'm not talking about baselining project plan, I'm talking about baselining the whole project. When you're baselining a project, you need to baseline also scope. So this is called scope baseline. Scope baseline. Let us get that clear. So scope baseline, you are baselining the project deliverables. You are also baselining any features that you're expecting to have from the project. You can also baseline the functionality that you're also expecting to have from the project. So you baseline a component called scope. Then the second one is called time. So you also need to baseline time. So we have a time or schedule baseline. Time or schedule baseline. So what do we mean by this? We are talking about start date on the schedule. We have our start date, okay? We also have our end date. End date. So what are we talking about? We are talking of start and end date of project tasks. So when you are baselining the project based on the timelines or schedule, you need to record the start date and the end date for each and every project task or even activity. You might want to call all activity. So every project task or activity must be recorded or baselined. When you do this, you end up with what is called work breakdown structure, WBS. So this is work breakdown. Let's make it clear. Breakdown structure. This is also important. Then for scope, you normally have what is called product breakdown structure. Okay. So product breakdown structure or PBS. That is also defined when you are baselining the scope. So the third item we're going to look at, component, is cost. Some they want to call it project budget. Baseline. Okay, project budget, baseline. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at the value of material. Okay, so we have material cost. We have labor, we have material cost, we also have labor. This is also very important. Or in addition, you might have other. Can I just put other expenses? Other expenses. That is when you are baselining your cost and budget. You look at other expenses, materials, labor. There could be a number of items you want to put here, but for clarity, I'm just going to leave it at 3. Then number 4, also, we also have another component called quality baseline. So we have quality baseline. Quality baseline. So what is expected here on quality baseline? We are looking at any quality standards, okay? Any quality standards that you want to baseline in the project, okay? You talk about them. And then you can also look at acceptance criteria. This is for the deliverables. Criteria. These are products or deliverables in the project. These are also covered under quality. Then the 5th one that we want to look at is risk. So here we are going to have number 5, risk baseline. Okay. What is expected on the risk baseline? So we are looking at items like potential risk, potential risks. You need to baseline them, and also you look at the impact or the likelihood. Okay, so this is probability of happening, probability, or the impact of the risk in case it materializes. So let's recap these 5 before we move on to the last 5. So when you're baselining your projects, you need to make sure that you have also baselined your scope, you have also baselined your deliverables, your product breakdown structure, your features, and also the functionality. Then when it comes to time also, you also need to baseline the timelines or the schedule or the project plan, okay? So this one can also be a project plan. Schedule or project plan. So you also need to baseline that in terms of the start date, the end date, and also the work breakdown structure. That is very, very important. So you put the start date, end date for all the tasks and the activities that you are going to perform in the project. Then we have the 3rd one, which is cost or budget baseline. What are we looking at here? You can talk about material cost. You need to baseline them in your project. You might talk about labor cost. You also need to baseline them in a project. We are talking about other expenses that might come, okay, that you might need to baseline. For example, you might have a cost in terms of licenses for any software, for example, or hardware, additional hardware. Those are other costs. So in terms of other costs that you predict to be part of the project in future, you also need to baseline them. You are creating a reference, okay? Then we have the quality baseline. Quality baseline, we are looking at the quality standards that you expect in the project. You baseline them so that you create a reference. As you go through the project, you are able to refer that in terms of the standards of quality that you expect in the project, this is what you have agreed. For example, you might say you don't expect a product to last less than 1 year as your quality standards. So this is one of the items you need to test to make sure that your product is able to go beyond 1 year. Then acceptance criteria. This is very important. Most project managers, from my experience, they forget about the acceptance criteria, especially of deliverables or products from the project. So that has to be defined early and also baselined so that you are able to make a comparison in future. This 5th one we are looking at is risk baseline. You also need to baseline your risks in the project so that you are able to make a comparison in terms of the potential risks that you had earlier and the current risks that you have in the project, and also the probability of the risk to happen or to occur. You also need to baseline that so that you make a comparison in future, and also the impact of the risk. It requires a baseline too. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're New to the channel, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button so that you are the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. Let's continue with the last 5 components of project baselining. So I'm going to put continue. Number 6 that we're going to look at is called organizational structure baseline. Okay. Organizational structure baseline. Here we are talking of the project structure, not the company structure. So this is project structure. Okay. So what are we looking at this point? We are looking at, for example, roles. Okay. You need to baseline the roles and responsibilities. The roles and responsibility, and also the team members. You need to baseline, which means you're making a reference to the expected team members in the project. Then the next one is governance structure. Okay. Governance structure. You also need to baseline this. For example, you want to say project board, part of the governance. Project board. You can also want to say project directorship. So there are a number of components that you have to do. Project directorship. Okay. So you need also to baseline your organization or the structure of the project. Then number 6, we are looking at technical. 7, sorry. Number 7, technical baseline. Okay. On technical baseline, what are we looking at here? We are looking at standards, for example, technical standards. We are looking at technical standards. Okay. Or even tools. We are looking at technical tools that we are using. You also need to baseline the tools that you are using so that we are able to make a comparison in future. Then the next one we are looking at is technical specifications also. Technical specification of what the project is going to produce or deliverables. You need to be able to baseline this so that you make a comparison in future. Then number 8, we have what is called assumptions baseline. Assumptions baseline. So what is expected here? There are a lot of assumptions that you make when you are planning your project or when you're just initiating your project. So we're going to look at these examples. For example, you look at maybe there was a regulatory assumption, or for example, market conditions. You assumed something on market conditions, okay? Or you assumed something on certain constraints, okay? Certain constraints. You make some assumptions over there. Okay. Then number 9, we are looking at milestone assumptions. Milestone. We are looking at milestone baseline, not assumptions. Milestone baseline. You also need to baseline your milestones so that it's very clear to everyone on what exactly you're talking about. So, in baselining your milestones, you have your start date and also your end date in your milestones. Each milestone must have a start and end date and the status of the milestone. What we expect the status. It could be work in progress, it could be finished, or semi-completed. This is very important. Each milestone must be baselined. You should be able to do that. Then number 10, we are looking at constraint baseline. Constraint baseline. What do we mean by this and what is expected? So there are certain constraints that you work with when you're baselining your project. Number 1, it could be cost constraint or budget. Okay. It could be human resources is a constraint, or it could be technical constraints. Technical constraints. So like what we did with the previous 5, let us summarize or recap on the last 5 that we have. So organizational structure must be baselined for the project. So let me put it project organizational structure. You should always baseline this so that you're able to compare in future what you originally had in mind or what you originally planned in the project against what you now have or what is the current organizational structure of the project at the moment. So on the organizational structure, you are looking at roles and responsibilities. We are also looking at team members. In your structure, you want to be able to compare the original team members you had or team roles that you have to used to have the same. So your reference is your baseline. Then the other one is governance. On the governance side, you want to see how the project is going to be run. It could be you had a project board, maybe you don't need a project board anymore, or you had a project director, you don't need the project director anymore, or on top of the project director, you now have a program manager. So once you're able to baseline this, you're able to progress, you're able to make also reference in future. There could be technical baseline. Technical baseline, you're looking at technical standards that you might baseline. Even tools, you're looking at tools that you can baseline and make a comparison in the future. Probably you want to start with 2 tools, then after about 10 months, you now have 10 of them. So at least you have a comparison to your baseline to say, initially I had 2, now I am now having 10, so you have a deviation of 8. Then technical specifications of the deliverables or the products of the project, you also need to baseline them. Most people, they make a mistake of not baselining on the technical side. They focus only on the timeline. And as a project manager, you should look at a bigger picture than only the project plan for baselining and the costs. Then the 8th item is assumption baseline. When you are creating any project or when you are planning any project or when you are documenting any project, there are certain assumptions that are inherent in your plans, in your documentation, in your discussions. So that has to be also baselined so that in future, if there's any change of those specific assumptions, you are able to make a reference that I had 6 assumptions, but now I have 10. What causes these assumptions to change? There could be some regulatory rule that has been changed. So we can put a regulatory rule that has been changed. So it means your assumption might not be valid anymore. It could be market conditions, they might change also, and your assumption is no longer valid. Or you want to compare the current market conditions against the previous one. Since you have baselined them, at least you have a reference. Then also, you might have certain constraints that you assumed, but now things have changed. Then you can compare with your baseline. We have also milestone baseline. Milestone baseline is you want to compare the original milestone numbers that you expected or even descriptions that you expected and the current or existing milestones so that you're able to make a reference and compare in the future. So you're looking at the start date of the milestone and also the end date and also the status of the milestone. Is it work in progress? Is it something that is finished? Is it something that is semi-finished? And so on and so forth. Then the last one but not the least is constraint baseline. When you're baselining any project, make sure all the constraints they are also documented when you start the project so that you are able to make a comparison in future. So we have costs, budget, we also human structures, also human resources, and also we have the technical constraints. So these are the last 10 items that we looked into. If you want to learn more about what is project baseline, I'm going to leave a link where you can also watch the video on what is project baselining for your knowledge. If you want me to create specific videos on how these baselines are actually created, updated, and also monitored, let me know in the comment section below by typing any of these baselines, and then I'll create